Hello, my name is Alex Brewer and welcome to this video in the Further Analytics training content series with this module covering metric administration. In this session, we'll be live on the system looking at adding and removing columns within metrics, reordering those columns, renaming metrics to suit your own naming conventions, hiding metrics and showing them again, reordering those metrics and what effect that has, and why having the same columns available on different metrics is important when building reports. Firstly, we'll cover adding and removing columns. Columns, as we'll see shortly, facilitate the detail in metrics. Metrics will look at the overarching activity that it's designed to do, but if you wanted to look into the specifics and surrounding factors and data points, columns are where you would want to look. It's the difference between a metric telling me that 10 candidates have been added today, but then the column telling me the name of those candidates. Columns can cover a lot of ground, especially with related entities. So if I'm looking at a first interviews metric, I can pull columns into it from the candidate record, the job record, the contact record, the company record of that contact, as well as any opportunity record if one exists. Adding and removing columns does directly impact the reporting capabilities and how insightful the reports are in click views anywhere on the system, but this is most utilized on the one view, as well as being the variables that you can frame reports on dashboards and slice and dice with, as we'll look through now. So if I click into first interviews, as we were saying before, the columns provide the detail. So you can see the group, the company, the job title, and the like. Similarly, within slice and dice, if I was to build the same report, all of the variables at the top here are the same as the columns that you saw in the click-through before. Both of these are governed within the admin menu. It will automatically take you to the metrics page, and there is an Edit Metrics tab. The Edit Metric tab will show you a list of all of the metrics that you have in your system. So if you navigate to the metric in question, there is a downwards facing arrow on the right-hand side where you can expand the metric. From here, you will see the visible columns on the left that are already existing within the metric on display. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the ones that you can add. So in this example, if I wanted to add the client contact created date, I would click the eye icon, and you would see that it's shifted across to the left. You'll see a ready to save icon to indicate that there is activity in need of saving. And then if I navigate back to the one view, and I find the metric we were looking at before, if I scroll across, you have the client contact created date column available. Similarly, within slice and dice, if I recreate the report again, you'll see that the client contact created date is now available. If you find that you've perhaps added the wrong one, or there are certain ones in here that are not being used, to remove them, we navigate back to the Edit Metrics page and find the metric in question. And you will see on the left-hand side where it shows the active columns, there is an eye icon with a dash through it. Simply click that to remove it. Although do be sure to save your work. Next, we'll look at reordering columns. Reordering has less of a far-reaching use case and is more for facilitating ease of use. Reordering columns doesn't impact the order in which the variables of a dashboard or a slice and dice report show, as they are listed alphabetically, but is most relevant for click-throughs. With click-throughs, they are more often than not used by the casual user who is just looking to check in on the details of a specific metric. With metrics that have large numbers of columns visible, sometimes finding the right column to find in that information that you want can become a bit of a fact-finding mission. You can reorder these columns to make relevant information more apparent by having it more readily available without the need to scroll, as we'll look through now. So within that first interviews metric again, if we click into it, you see that the columns are in this specific order. However, if I find that the job owner or the job ID are actually maybe a little bit more relevant, having them available at the first glance when you click through, moving them may be the best move. So if we navigate back to the admin menu again and into edit metrics, when we find our metric, in the visible columns list, everything that is further to the top is further to the left in the click-through. So interview type, which was the first column in the click-through, is top of the list. Job ID and job owner, which were the furthest right, are at the bottom of the list. To facilitate moving them across, each line has 4 arrows in an icon. If you click and drag that up to the top and save again, when we go back to the one view and click back into the metric, you'll see that the job owner column is now furthest left. Moving on to renaming metrics. Renaming metrics is a very simple task which can actually be incredibly beneficial. Most metrics, unless changed during implementation, will have their default names. However, each business will have their own nuanced wording of certain things. Most obvious example of this would be CV sends in the UK being called client submissions in the US, even though they are the same thing. Keeping metrics as apparent as possible in their name not only helps when report building, especially in the cases of businesses that have large numbers of metrics, and especially those that have several that work similarly, but also for end users to be able to identify at a glance what it is that they're looking at. So into the screen share, if we pick on new contacts with no call, for example, if I navigate to the admin menu and then again within edit metrics, I can use the search feature at the top to find my metrics. So if I go new contacts with no call, you'll see that there is a text box that you can click. So if I am adding a few exclamation marks to add an element of danger to this metric, and I click save, when I then go into the one view, this metric has now updated to look even more exciting. Next, we'll go through hiding and showing metrics. With the complete metrics list, there is the opportunity to hide or show metrics, perhaps in order to declutter an ever-expanding metrics list, or to dust off some previously defunct or dormant ones. There is also a use case in having metrics that are very specifically configured. So for example, filtering on information in a private label that is not meant to be widely viewed, that have been used in reports previously, but you don't want the business to be able to access this potentially sensitive information. In examples like this, metrics that have been hidden will still remain in existing reports, but would not be available to be added onto any new ones unless unhidden. So this would then facilitate you being able to use metrics with sensitive information involved, build the reports, hide them so that no one can actually access them, but you still get the reporting functionality that analytics affords. Now, in terms of showing how this is done, if we jump back to the system, as is a theme with this session within the admin menu and edit metrics, when you go to the metrics list, with your metrics, you obviously have the ability to expand them to look at the columns and you can rename them, but there are also 3 dots here. If you click that, you would see hide metric on an actively listed metric. Once this is done, you will see that the line is grayed out. So if you're looking through your metric list and you see grayed out metrics, it does mean that they are hidden, at which point you click the 3 dots again and you click to show the metric. You would then need to save in order to have them hide or display. On to reordering metrics. Reordering metrics is more of a cosmetic change, but one that does play into that ease of use factor. It's a small change that makes layout look just that much better, and one that is only really relevant in 2 places. The first is reordering the priority metrics that you have at the top of your one views, and the second is reordering the order that metrics will show in a slice and dice report, as we'll show here. So in this example, you can see that contractors out in period is the second placed tile. So if I go to admin menu again, just for a bit of variety this time, instead of the edit metrics tab, we're moving over to metric ordering, which is beside it. This will show a list of all of the metrics in your system in the order in which they would display if you were to have all of them as priority metrics or all of them in a slice and dice report. So to reorder these, The same as with reordering the columns. If you drag and drop, make sure that you save, and then go back to the one view, contractors out in period is now that first place tile. Similarly, within Slice and Dice, if I create a report using first interviews and CVs sent, you'll see that first interviews is that first column, which in terms of workflow, CVs sent or client submissions, if you're watching this in a country that terms it that way, would usually be the first step. So to tidy that report up slightly, if we go back to admin, go back into metric ordering, if you are in need of finding where a metric is, you can use this search bar at the top. So that would then denote that CV sent is number 60. If I scroll down to number 60, drag that above first interviews, hit save, go back to my Slice and Dice report, create it again. CV sent is now on the left-hand side. Lastly, for this session, we'll look at why having the same columns available across different metrics will impact reporting. With reports in dashboards and Slice and Dice, in cases where you're looking to use multiple metrics at the same time, having the same columns available for them is important when looking for results. The way that metrics will work is that unless a column is enabled as visible, as far as that metric is concerned, it's not information that it would be regarding as important for results. It's unwanted information. What this means is that for one metric on the report, it will display the information in the line, whereas the other will not, and split the lines of the results, as I'll show here. So within Slice and Dice, if I again create a report of first interviews and CV sends, if I then look to bring in candidates and job ID and job type, you'll see that in this example here, the CV sent does not provide any information for job ID or job type. However, first interviews does. So this creates the disparity. So to get around this, similarly to what we were talking before, when you find your metric within the Edit Metrics tab, so if I search for CV sent here, if I then enable within the job ID and the job type, when I save and go back to my report, and I put candidate back in, and I put job ID and job type, you'll see that there is no more split lines, in that both metrics are now aware that they should be tracking job ID and job type. For further information on Bullhorn Analytics, please visit the Bullhorn Learning Hub. Thank you for your time.